Alright, this is one of those posts I've typed and deleted a dozen times. I'm not here to brag, and I'm not asking for forgiveness either. I just need to get it out somewhere anonymous, where it can sit without looking back at me. My name's William. I'm not special. That's kind of the point. I worked forgettable jobs, lived in forgettable apartments, and spent most of my 20s convincing myself I was smarter than the people who told me to play it straight. By the time this happened, I was tired of scraping by, tired of watching other people get ahead while I felt invisible. I told myself I wasn't greedy. I told myself I was just correcting an imbalance. The job I'm talking about was supposed to be clean. Surgical. Robbing a cash collector sounded almost boring when I first thought of it. Routine, predictable, built on habits. No victims with faces, no alarms screaming in my ears. Just money changing hands before it ever got counted. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to do it. It grew slowly, like a bad idea you keep feeding because it feels logical. I had reasons. I always did. Rent was late. My dad's voice was still in my head telling me I'd never amount to much. And there was this quiet, dangerous belief that if I could pull off something big just once, everything after would fall into place. It didn't. But at the time, I really thought it would. Looking back now, the scariest part isn't what went wrong. It's how calm I felt deciding to do it at all. The idea didn't come from a movie montage or some criminal mastermind fantasy. It came from boredom and observation. Every Wednesday morning, like clockwork, a private cash collector stopped by the strip mall near my apartment. Same van, same driver, same timing. I noticed because I was always there, killing time, pretending to job hunt on my phone. At first it was just trivia. Then it became math. If routines exist, breaks exist. I started telling myself I wasn't planning anything, just paying attention. That lie lasted about a week. Preparation, for me, wasn't weapons and blueprints. It was patience. I learned the rhythms of the place, who smoked where, when the bakery trash went out, how long the collector stayed inside each store. I rehearsed excuses in my head more than actions. If questioned, I'd be forgettable. If seen, I'd belong. I convinced myself the risk was minimal. No one would get hurt. I'd take the money and disappear back into my small, quiet life, finally ahead for once, or so then. Once I admitted to myself that I was actually going to do it, everything sharpened. Colors felt brighter. Sounds stuck longer. Planning stopped being abstract and started feeling physical, like a knot tightening in my chest. I didn't buy anything dramatic. No masks, no guns. That was intentional. I told myself weapons escalated things, forced people into fear, made mistakes louder. I wanted this to feel like a glitch, not a confrontation. I picked clothes that blended in, generic jacket, neutral shoes, nothing memorable. I even wore a baseball cap I hated because it made me look like everyone else. The real preparation happened inside my head. I walked the route over and over, timing my steps, counting seconds between doors opening and closing. I practiced steady breathing in the mirror, trained my face into something blank and harmless. I worked on my hands most of all, keeping them still. Shaking hands give you away faster than words. The night before, I barely slept. Not from fear, exactly, but anticipation. It felt like standing on a diving board, knowing the water's cold but stepping forward anyway. The morning it happened felt offensively normal. Sun out, coffee too hot, my phone buzzing with a notification I ignored. I remember thinking that if this was the day everything changed, it should feel heavier. It didn't. That scared me more than anything. I arrived early and waited, leaning against the wall like I belonged there. People passed me without really seeing me, which weirdly felt like validation. When the cash collector's van rolled in, my heart didn't race the way I expected. It slowed. Everything narrowed into a straight line of cause and effect. The collector stepped out, calm, professional, unaware of me in the way you're unaware of furniture. I followed at a distance that felt safe but not suspicious. Inside the building, Sounds echoed more than usual. A door slammed somewhere and I flinched, but no one noticed. This was the point of no return, and I knew it. I told myself to stick to the plan, to trust the version of me that had thought this through. Still, my mouth went dry. My hands stayed steady, but my thoughts started slipping, like something important was already unraveling. I moved exactly the way I'd rehearsed it 100 times in my head. No sudden gestures, no bravado. I was just there at the right second, when the collector's attention was pointed anywhere but at me. The world shrank to a few square feet of space, and the dull rush of blood in my ears. What surprised me most was how ordinary it felt. No dramatic tension, no cinematic build-up. He turned too late, saw me, opened his mouth to say something. I spoke first, calmly, like I was asking for directions. That's when I realized how powerful a steady voice can be. If you sound like you belong, people assume you do. He hesitated. Just for a second. That was all it took. I took the bag and stepped back, already imagining myself walking away. Adrenaline hit me hard, like a jolt of electricity. My heart was racing, but my body stayed precise, almost mechanical. And that's when the detail I'd missed showed up. Something small. Something stupid. Something human. I didn't know it yet, but that was the crack the whole plan would fall through. The detail was a kid. Not part of the plan, not part of my mental map. A teenage delivery runner came barreling out of the back hallway at exactly the wrong moment, earbuds in, eyes down, moving too fast to stop. He clipped the collector's shoulder, stumbled, swore loudly, and the sound cracked the quiet like a dropped plate. Everything froze for half a beat. The collector's eyes widened, not with fear at first, but with awareness. Awareness is dangerous. I felt it spread through the room like a smell. The kid yanked his earbuds out and stared at the bag in my hands, then at my face, then back at the collector. His mouth hung open, searching for context. I tried to play it off. A joke, a shrug, the universal language of nothing to see here. But the collector stiffened, fingers tightening, instinct finally catching up. Someone in one of the shops peeked out, drawn by the noise. Too many variables, all at once. I backed away, heart hammering now, adrenaline turning sharp and ugly. The plan had depended on silence and isolation. Instead, I had witnesses forming in real time. I realized then that crimes don't unravel loudly. They unravel in inches, in glances, in moments you can't rewind. Panic doesn't announce itself. It creeps in disguised as problem-solving. My brain started firing options faster than I could trust any of them. Walk away now. Say it's a misunderstanding. Drop the bag. Run. Each choice felt wrong in a different way. The collector spoke first, voice tight, trying to sound authoritative and failing. He didn't yell. That almost made it worse. People respond to calm seriousness. The kid took a step back, suddenly aware he was in something he hadn't signed up for. A shop owner leaned farther out, eyes narrowing, curiosity tipping toward concern. I said something, don't even remember what, but it came out rushed, defensive. My steady voice was gone. That was another crack. You can feel the moment when people stop believing you. Their bodies change. They square up. They look at exits. I took another step back, then another. The bag felt heavier now, like it knew it didn't belong to me. Someone asked if they should call someone. The word police wasn't said, but it hovered there, thick and obvious. I turned and bolted. Not a heroic sprint, just messy, desperate movement. Behind me, I heard shouting. The ordinary morning shattered, and I was the reason. Running changes everything. Your thoughts stop being clever and start being animal. I didn't have a dramatic escape route, just instincts and alleys I half remembered from years of pacing the neighborhood. My lungs burned fast, like they'd been waiting for this excuse to punish me. I cut behind the strip mall, jumped a low fence, nearly ate concrete when my foot slipped. The bag slammed against my hip with every step, an accusation I couldn't drop. I heard someone yelling behind me, Could have been the collector, could have been anyone. Sound lies when you're scared. I ducked into a service corridor that smelled like old grease and damp cardboard. I pressed myself against the wall and waited, trying to disappear through breathing alone. Every second stretched. Footsteps passed somewhere nearby, then faded. Silence returned, but it wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. I opened the bag with shaking hands, just to check, just to confirm it was real. The money was there. Seeing it didn't feel like victory. It felt like proof of guilt, undeniable and heavy. I stayed hidden until my legs stopped trembling. When I finally moved again, it wasn't confidence pushing me forward. It was fear telling me not to stay still too long. I didn't go home right away. That felt too obvious, like the universe would be waiting there with crossed arms. Instead, I walked. Fast at first, then slower, forcing myself to look normal. I passed people walking dogs, a couple arguing quietly, a guy laughing into his phone. None of them knew what I was carrying, what I'd just done, and that disconnect made my stomach twist. Every siren sounded personal. Every van looked like it might swerve toward me. I kept replaying faces in my head, the kid's confusion, the collector's sudden certainty, the shop owner's suspicion. I tried to edit the memory, make it softer, but it resisted. I found a public restroom a few blocks away and locked myself into a stall. My reflection looked wrong, like my face belonged to someone else. I stuffed the bag deeper into my backpack, hands still shaking, and practiced breathing like I'd read about online. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. It barely helped. The adrenaline was fading, leaving something heavier behind. Not guilt exactly. Awareness. I understood, for the first time, that even if I got away clean, I'd never be anonymous to myself again. That realization sat with me as I finally headed home, careful, quiet, already changed. That night was worse than the chase. Silence gives your thoughts too much room. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps on the stairs. I kept the lights off and sat on the edge of my bed, the bag on the floor between my feet like a sleeping animal I was afraid to wake. I counted the money twice, then a third time, not because I needed the number but because counting gave my hands something to do. The total was more than I'd ever held at once. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt temporary, like borrowed time. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the moment the kid looked at me, trying to understand what story he'd accidentally walked into. I imagined police knocking, imagined explanations that sounded thin even in my own head. I rehearsed lies the way I'd rehearsed the crime. By morning, the adrenaline was gone completely. In its place was a dull, grinding anxiety that didn't spike or fade, it just stayed. I realized then that the crime hadn't ended when I ran. It had moved in with me, settled into the corners of my apartment, and it wasn't planning to leave quietly. A few days passed without a knock on the door, and that almost made it worse. I started checking the local news compulsively, scrolling past weather and sports, waiting for my life to appear between ads. Attempted robbery at strip mall. Cash collector targeted. Every headline felt like a jump scare, even when it wasn't about me. I noticed changes in myself first. I stopped taking the same routes. I flinched when strangers looked at me too long. I replayed my own movements and reflections, judging my posture, my walk, like I might give myself away retroactively. Paranoia is creative that way. Then there was the call. Not from the police, just my bank, asking about unusual activity. Perfectly normal, perfectly harmless, and I still felt my pulse slam into my throat. I answered too carefully, hung up too fast. I started thinking about the kid. About how easy it would be for him to describe me. Average height. Forgettable face. That's what I'd counted on. But memory sharpens under stress. People remember more than you want them to. I told myself I'd gotten away with it. But deep down, I knew better. Getting away isn't a moment. It's a process. And I was still in the middle of it. I started building a version of events I could live with. Not the truth, something smoother, easier to explain if I ever had to. I told myself the collector would have been fine, that the money was insured, that no one really lost anything except a little time and nerves. The story sounded reasonable when I kept it abstract. It fell apart when I tried to spend the money. Every purchase felt loud. I paid cash and imagined cameras zooming in, clerks memorizing my face. I bought nothing big, nothing celebratory. Groceries. Gas. Boring things. The money was supposed to change my life, and instead it just made me cautious in new ways. I avoided friends. I didn't trust my own tone not to crack. When people asked how I was doing, I said fine, too quickly. Lying is exhausting because it never gets to rest. You have to keep it fed. One night, I dreamed I was back in that hallway, except everyone was staring at me, waiting for me to explain myself. I woke up with my heart racing, the taste of panic sharp in my mouth. That's when I understood something important. I wasn't afraid of being caught anymore. I was afraid of being seen clearly, and realizing I deserved it. Time didn't smooth the edges like I hoped it would. It pressed down instead, steady and patient. Weeks passed, then months, and nothing happened in the way I'd feared. No arrest. No confrontation. Just life continuing, which turned out to be its own kind of punishment. I started noticing how often my mind drifted back to that morning. Not the running, not the money, but the moment right before it all cracked. That split second where I could have stepped back and let the collector walk away. That was the part that stuck. Choice is heavier than consequence. I tried to justify it in quieter ways. I worked more. I donated small amounts anonymously, like I could balance some invisible ledger. It didn't help. Good acts done for the wrong reasons still feel wrong. Every now and then I'd see a kid with earbuds rushing somewhere and my chest would tighten. I wondered if he ever thought about it, or if I was just a strange footnote in his day. The idea that he might have forgotten me completely felt both relieving and humiliating. The money slowly drained away, but the feeling didn't. I realized then that some things don't depreciate. They compound. And I was living off the interest. Eventually, the money was gone. Not in some dramatic blaze of consequences, just rent, repairs, life doing what it always does. When the last of it left my hands, I waited for something to happen. Relief. Panic. Closure. None of it came. What stayed was quieter and worse, recognition. I realized I'd been measuring myself by outcomes. Got away or didn't. Profited or didn't. But the real shift had already happened back in that hallway. I'd crossed a line internally, proved to myself that under the right pressure, I'd choose myself over others without much hesitation. That knowledge rearranged how I saw my past and, more uncomfortably, my future. I didn't turn myself in. I didn't make a dramatic confession. I just stopped telling myself flattering stories. I stopped pretending it was a one-off, a fluke born of stress. It was a decision, clean and deliberate, followed by 100 smaller decisions to live with it. I became more cautious, yes, but also more honest in an unromantic way. I stopped chasing shortcuts. Not because I'd learned some noble lesson, but because I finally understood the price was never just legal. It was personal. And it kept collecting interest long after the cash was spent. I'm not writing this as a redemption arc. There isn't one. Life didn't reward me for feeling bad, and it didn't destroy me for doing wrong. It just kept going, which might be the most honest outcome there is. What I learned is this: the moment you justify something to yourself too easily, you should be afraid. Not of the law, not of consequences, but of how flexible your morals suddenly become. I always thought criminals were louder, messier, more obvious. Turns out they're often just tired people telling themselves convenient stories. If you're reading this and you're standing on the edge of something, telling yourself it's temporary or harmless or deserved, pause. That calm certainty you feel? That's not confidence. That's the part of you that's already stepping away from who you thought you were. I got away with it in the legal sense. No cuffs, no courtroom. But I didn't escape unchanged. I live with a clearer, harsher understanding of myself, and that's not something you can spend away. So here's my advice, for whatever it's worth: if you're desperate, ask for help. If you're angry, wait. And if a plan seems perfect, look harder. There's always a small detail you're missing. And sometimes that detail is you.